Today, we're joined by Andy Cunningham, founder and president of Cunningham Collective, best-selling author of Get to Her Heart and part of the first Apple Macintosh launch team alongside Steve Jobs. She's a specialist in brand positioning and helping firms to position themselves to attract high-quality talent. Great to have you on the Unified Brand podcast, Andy. It'd be good to learn a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
Great. Thank you. It's great to be here, Chris.
Good stuff. So yeah, could you tell us a little bit more about Cunningham Collective, what you do, and what your background's in?
Sure. So Cunningham Collective is a small strategy consulting firm that helps companies primarily with their positioning, their market positioning, and their go-to-market planning and strategy. And to that end, we do all kinds of things. We do, in addition to positioning and messaging work, which we do a lot of, and go-to-market planning work, we also help companies develop their purpose statements, which has become really important. We help them figure out how to hire better people. You mentioned that earlier. We also work on corporate values. We have a framework for helping a company develop its values, and everybody is re-looking at their values in today's day and age. And we help them with communication strategies. So
that's awesome. Thanks very much. So yeah, it'd be good to learn a little bit more about where does your love of brand positioning and go-to-market strategies, where does that come from?
All my life I have loved science and technology, but I'm not a scientist or technologist, and I don't have the mathematical skills, I think, to do that. Otherwise, I would have done that. But what I do love about what I am good at is I'm really good at helping companies bring their innovations to market. So I get to work with scientists and technologists all the time, and I use my skills, which are really all around go-to-market planning and strategy and positioning, to help them take their great inventions and do something with them in the market. So that's why I love communication. That's why I love marketing. That's why I love what I do. So
Cool. And do you find that a lot of companies in sort of in the tech space and sort of engineering space that they find it difficult to communicate that message to their target audience and to their employees?
yes, I think that technologists are very much they're like I am with math, right? It's not their forte.
Me
So
too.
they don't really know how to speak to a regular human being, and that's okay because there's people like me to help translate. So that's what I do, is I help them translate their amazing inventions and their amazing innovations so that the market will understand what they're doing and hopefully make decisions to buy it.
Cool. And so today, you mentioned earlier about purpose and values, and that you have a framework to help companies to develop that. Why are these important today, and what are some reasons that companies should consider thinking about their purpose and values?
That's a really, really great question. And I have to sort of start with the fact that I'm a baby boomer. And in the baby boomer age, all we cared about, our entire environment was all about shareholder value, right? It was about increasing the value of your stock and increasing the value in the market cap of companies. Well, along come the millennials, and they're facing us and saying, wait a minute, that's not enough. That's not enough. We have to care about more than that. We have to care about our stakeholders, not just our shareholders, our employees, our partners, our customers. And it's not just about making money, it's about making a difference. So when that started to happen and more millennials got into the market, into the workforce, along with now everybody following the millennials, this whole concept of standing for something more than just making money it's critical. It's not just a nice thing to do anymore. It's the only way you're going to hire employees in today's environment. So we really help companies figure out what their purpose is. And, interestingly enough, companies all have a purpose. They just haven't been able to uncover it. So I sort of look at it like, like Michelangelo and the David statue. The David statue was always in the stone, but you have to kind of peel away and chip away at all of the stuff on the outside of it in order to get it. Why? What does that company really stand for in the marketplace?
So with that, does that directly impact how that company, once you've got the purpose and values in place, is that sort of guiding principles that they will then use to on the recruitment side, so not just attract the talent, but also from their point of view to identify the right kind of talent?
Yes, it helps identify the right kind of talent, people who care about their causes and their purpose, and also to train that talent and to do the performance management of that talent, onboard that talent, all of those things it's critical for. The framework that I developed in my book, which is a DNA framework, I think you've read it, you know what I'm talking about, where in the world of business, there are sort of three kinds of companies. There are mothers who are very customer focused, mechanics who are very product focused, and missionaries who are focused on changing the world. Well, it turns out that that same construct works for hiring people that match the DNA of your company. So if you happen to have a missionary company, like when I worked with Apple back in the day, very missionary, right, under Steve Jobs' leadership, it helped a lot to have a broad swath of the employee base also be missionaries in their DNA construct. So that's super, super helpful.
Wow, cool. Yeah, because I really enjoyed the book. I thought it was amazing, and it's sort of revolutionized the way I think about positioning and branding. And one of the things I can see from that is obviously that there's that the test in the book, the kind of the assessment that you can take, the questions you can ask to kind of find out a bit more about who you are as a brand DNA kind of thing. Is that a similar sort of step that you would take then to ascertain that employee, that talent?
You know what, I need to make a test for the employee, because the test that's in the book is really much more focused on companies. But I'll tell you what happened to me right after I published that book. A young woman who was a friend of mine had asked if she could meet with me, because she was one of the first people to read my book. She was probably 23, very young. And she said to me, your book really struck me because it taught me that I need to work for a company that has the same kind of DNA as I have. And I'm currently working for a company that doesn't, and I'm super unhappy, and now I know why. So I kept saying, and I said this to her at the time, I said, oh gosh, I need to write up at least an essay on why this is important for humans as well as it is for companies. Because if you choose to work for a company that has a completely different DNA construct than you do, you probably aren't going to be happy. So she taught me a lot.
Wow, that's cool. So on that side of things, you said you mentioned Steve Jobs, and I watched a lecture you gave, or a talk you gave to AWS, and in that you mentioned the idea of the pirate flag and working underneath the Steve Jobs and the team and things. And I just thought that was really interesting. So what were some of the things you got from that experience that helped you with regards to sort of positioning, but also the employment and keeping those employees and retaining top talent, things like that?
Sure. So the biggest thing that I learned back then is that building a tribe out of your employees and your customers, by the way, is a critical thing. And Steve took that to the nth end, right? He built a tribe, and not only did he build the tribe where he said, I'm only going to have 100 people working on this Macintosh thing. And if you're not part of that 100, you're not going to even be allowed in my building. I'm going to have a separate building. You have to have a separate badge to get in. We're going to put the pirate flag above the building. We're going to really distinguish ourselves as a different group of people. In fact, there were other people at Apple who couldn't even get into that building because it was just for this 100 people. And what Steve Jobs figured out years later is how critical that tribe concept is, not only to your employees, but also to your customers. So it took him 8 years after he got fired from Apple, to really kind of come to terms with the fact that Macintosh was not going to replace the IBM PC in the market, which is what he thought. He thought all of the business people out there would see what a great computer this was and throw away their IBM PCs and pick up the Macintosh instead. And of course, that didn't happen. And literally, that's what led to him getting fired. But what he did figure out is that the people who were using Macintosh were these sort of quirky, creative types, right? So Macintosh started to sneak in the back door of enterprises through the creative departments in advertising. And once it got in that way, sneaking it in, then it sort of spread to the marketing department, and then it spread beyond marketing into other departments inside of the enterprise. And he realized this when he got back to Apple, and he decided to recognize the tribe of the crazy ones. If you know that ad campaign he did about Think Different, it was really all about attracting and coagulating that tribe that was now the creatives, right? The crazy ones, the misfits, the people who didn't belong. And by the way, it's worth pointing out that the campaign, which was called Think Different, and if any of your listeners have not seen that ad campaign, it is completely worth looking at, because it is every bit as good, possibly better than the 1984 ad that was done in 1984 when we launched the Macintosh. But anyway, that phrase "think different" is so important on so many levels. The first thing to understand about it is a recognition of a new tribe, a tribe that thinks about things differently. Two, it uses the word think, which at the time was IBM's big phrase. So for years and years and years, IBM had people put little signs on their desk that they're about this big. I actually have one that say "think" on them. So he stole IBM's word "think" and then stuck the word "different" next to it to make it to give it the Apple touch. And then he made it grammatically incorrect, right? It wasn't think differently, it was think different. So there were three really important things about that campaign that I think made it incredibly sticky, and also called out to his tribe and started to bring them into the fold at Apple. And then once he had it in there, he just continued to nurture that tribe, expand that tribe, grow that tribe. And today, those of us, I'm an Apple user. I don't know about you, but I'm still part of the tribe. And I am proud to be part of the tribe, right? I would never show up with a different product other than my Macintosh or my iPhone. And most people feel that way because he's been even through the grave, he speaks to us with the products. So
yeah, it's interesting how that line is still drawn. There are some people, and I think that's where you tell a really good brand is when there are people that just don't want to entertain it, but then the people that do are really, really into it and kind of advocates at a high level. And that must be similar for the employees as well. It's kind of that high level of advocacy.
Absolutely. I mean, when you feel that you are part of the tribe that is being led by whoever your leader is, whether you're an employee or a customer, it's the same thing. You're all humans. You feel a sense of belonging. And this is a big thing in today's world, especially after the pandemic. A sense of belonging is what we are all seeking, right? And if you can be a company that talks about, that brings people into this sense of belonging, it's a big deal. And by the way, there's a great book out there by someone named Mark Schaefer, called Belong to the Brand. And it's a very good book about this very topic. It's about how you can leverage the human need for belonging to create a brand.
That's amazing. And I remember the 1984 one, which was an awesome campaign. I love the Think Different as well. And it kind of, that then leads into those Mac versus PC again, where it's kind of creating those lines between the two. You're on this side or you're on this side, and kind of the stark differences between them. So from that point of view, do you think that from an acquisition point of view, having a brand that also has that community is as important from an internal perspective as the external perspective for the customers?
Yes, absolutely. And if you think about acquisitions, mergers and acquisitions, that type of acquisition, if I don't know if you remember this, but several years ago, I don't know the number, maybe close to 15 at this point, probably 12 to 15, Amazon bought Zappos. And Zappos was this famous company led by Tony Hsieh, who wrote a book called Inventing Happiness or Creating Happiness. I forget the exact name of it. But the whole point behind Zappos was customer happiness and customer satisfaction. He ran a completely customer-centric company, very, very customer-centric. And so when Bezos made this decision in his head that he wanted to change the company from being very mechanic oriented or very product oriented, which is where he was, to being Earth's most customer centric company, which is where he wanted to take the company, the first thing he did was buy Zappos. And he didn't buy Zappos because he didn't know how to sell shoes online, because of course, Bezos he was selling everything online. He could easily sell shoes online. He bought that company for the customer centricity culture that it brought into the employees at Amazon. And then he did a number of other very specific things. A famous thing that he did right after that was he had everybody leave an empty chair in the room where meetings were being held in order to represent the customer, so that every time someone would look around the room and they saw an empty chair there, what would hit their mind is, oh, I have to think about the customer. And he just continued to do those things over and over again, including redefining their mission statement to, we want to be Earth's most customer-centric company. And of course, it's worth saying that Amazon doesn't do this through warm and fuzziness. They do it through technology. They're trying to be Earth's most customer-centric company by meeting your every need through technology. So it's an interesting story about how brands make a shift in their DNA in order to attract the people they want to attract as customers as well as employees.
Wow, that's cool. So I hadn't heard about the empty chair situation, but that's really interesting. And there's a few different things I've heard similar with culture and little rituals that can help to embed certain ideas and things like that. Like tiny noticeable touches and stuff like this. And are those sort of things. So in terms of developing the culture, is it good to do that through rituals and behaviors and that kind of thing that get built upon, that end up building that culture internally?
Yes, absolutely. Rituals are critical to culture. I mean, if you talk to any anthropologist, they will tell you that rituals have been part of the human condition for ever and ever and ever. And so when you're building a tribe, you have to build rituals into that tribe, and you have to make that tribe feel very special. but you have to also be open enough to expand the tribe out. This is what Apple did so well. They expanded the tribe over time to include, gosh, however many customers there are today, zillions. But recognizing the tribe, speaking to the tribe, creating a sense of belonging to that tribe, a sense of pride of association are all critical to building a company, basically. I mean, your people are everything, right?
So what are the trends and what are the current situation with regards to retaining top talent? What are some of the things that are going to be coming down the pipeline on the horizon and stuff like that? And how does new technologies sort of find their way into that sort of situation?
Great question. So you're probably familiar with this phrase, product-led growth. Is that something that you're familiar with? It's the notion, product-led growth has kind of been a big trend in Silicon Valley for, I would say, like the last 10 years. And what it really represents is it represents the ability to build a product that is so sticky that the product itself almost markets itself, right? Facebook is a great example of this, right?
Yeah.
Really great sticky products that people want to use, and you don't need to spend a lot of money marketing them. That's the goal, right? And they have a SaaS economic model. That's been the goal for a while. What is starting to happen, though, is what we're calling human-led growth. So now what we're doing is we're shifting from the product being the sticky thing to the people being the sticky thing, right? And the people, the tribe, if you will, who are making that product and putting it out in the world are the ones that are the most are really critical to the growth of a company. And so we're calling it human-led growth. And we have a client today called Mentor Cloud, which is actually leveraging human-led growth in order to help companies essentially grow. Sorry, I have to sneeze. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Anyway, we have a company called Mentor Cloud that is using human-led growth as a concept to help companies figure out how to get their people to be the engine of growth rather than the product. And the reason, I'll just want to say one more thing about this. The reason that that's an issue is that many of the SaaS products that are out there today are not like Facebook, right? They're not so easy to use, and they're not so sticky. It's not like selling sugar to children, right? They're complex products that require lots of onboarding. They require lots of consulting to make them work. They require a lot of effort. It's not so sticky anymore. So now you have to kind of move on to the next big thing. And we think Mentor Cloud and us, we think human-led growth is the next big thing.
Yeah, so I guess as technology accelerates, as you have more SaaS companies or more technology companies, I guess the things that are going to help you to differentiate more is being able to build and develop that tribe. So that tribe both internally and externally. So what are some of the things that people can do right sort of today to have a think about that and consider the things that they need to do in order to shift to a more human-centric approach?
I think the first thing is they really have to speak to the tribe in the language that the tribe is expecting to hear or wants to hear. And they have to create this sense of belonging, right? It has to be like, well, Steve took it to the nth degree with the whole building and the pirate flag and all of that. But there needs to be, meetings and awards and rituals and contact. There needs to be physical contact to make these things work. This is very difficult to do over Zoom, right? So one of the things that Mentor Cloud is trying to do that I think is going to be a big thing going forward is how do you take the wisdom with your tribe that your tribe has and transfer that wisdom to the new people that you're trying to bring into your tribe, right?
Yeah.
So and that's a tough thing to do, right? It's training and stuff is good, but it doesn't go all the way. So you have to like transfer wisdom from one set of people to another set of people. And I think this is, again, what people are going to be looking at from a technology perspective going forward is how do we do that? Because our people are really the most important thing. And I think we're really looking at an era where there are going to be a lot more tribes being built because of that.
And I suppose that's really tricky when you have a hybrid team as well. And some of the issues that you might have with that is that transference of knowledge that in the traditional workplace, when I started working in the workplace, you'd have your mentors in the office, you'd have people there that were guiding you, you'd have, your department heads, that kind of thing. So is that something that is also being looked at from a technological point of view, or is that more of a mix between coming into the office and then the hybrid work?
Yeah, I think we are really noticing now that it's very difficult to create that sense of belonging when you're not having actual human physical or in the same place contact. It's really challenging. I'll tell you today, I have a meeting at the Hyatt World headquarters in Chicago. And when I got here, I had to get here early to do this call with you. And a wonderful woman is helping me get myself all set up. But she said, boy, we haven't had people really back in the office in, a long time. So we're all sort of rusty on how do we get the coffee machine up and running, and how do we get, because people, and then one person will come in, but then nobody else is here. So you're living in a very lonely environment. And that's what we have right now. We have confusion about this hybrid thing. We really have confusion. And I used to think that the world of work is going to completely change, and we're all going to go not only hybrid, but we're all going to just do work over teleconferencing like what we're doing right here. And I think now that we're going to have a lot more people coming back to work to interact with each other, because that's where creativity really happens. And that's where the human-led growth thing is going to be so important. So I think we're going back to a world, especially the young people, right? This is their social life is at work, and they want to be with other people. So I think we're going back to that.
Cool. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I've seen more people come together. There's more networking events, and it just sort of, there's so much of a difference when you meet people in person and kind of get a chance to connect and meet them on a human level. Is exactly what you're talking
So
about.
much. So much. I attended the first business cocktail party since the pandemic about 2 weeks ago. I was at the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference in San Francisco, and I went to a cocktail party, and everyone was so overly friendly and just lovely. It was just a lovely time, right? Everyone really wanted to talk. They wanted to reach out. There was none of this fear of walking up to a group of people and being afraid, oh, I don't know them. Should I say hi? Everyone was doing this with everybody. It was just really showed the need that humans have to talk to each other and be with each other. So it was just a really lovely experience.
I think yeah, I mean, I'm slightly introverted. So before the pandemic, I would find situations like that hard. I'd still do them, but I'd find it hard. But after the pandemic now, it's similarly the kind of yeah, that fear is kind of settled down a bit. It's kind of like you want to connect, you want to talk more. It's interesting what that's done.
Absolutely. The need to connect becomes stronger than the fear of interacting with people. So it's kind of a good thing for people, I think, and
Definitely.
that is where creativity happens. And just to tell another short Steve Jobs story, one of the things he was very big on was creating physical environments where people could interact with each other, because he knew when they interacted with each other, that's when the greatest ideas could be developed. So all of this environments that he ever created at Apple and at Next, and then again at Apple, were all around creating these open spaces where people could talk and chat and spend time together, because it really makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, there's nothing better than when you're yeah, creative, you're brainstorming, you're in a room together with people and they're kind of bouncing ideas off each other. There's something quite yeah, magical about it. The things that come out of it. If you're siloed by yourself, you can have very much one track road you're going down, but when you bring other people into it, that's when the magic happens, definitely.
Exactly. You need that. I mean, two brains are better than one, and four brains are better than two, and on and on. So
Good stuff. So what are some of the things that people get wrong when it comes to retaining their talent and also positioning their brand so that it can attract the top talent?
I think that some leaders, many leaders, don't fully understand the importance of this tribe creation thing, and they end up with this sort of um, leader like pyramid structure where they live at the top and the rest of the employees are down on the bottom, and everybody's supposed to do what they say, right? And what I have found over time is that if you take that triangle and instead of have the leader position him or herself at the top, but more in the center of it, it creates a much more congenial and effective environment, because the best CEOs are the ones who realize that they are not amazing at everything, right? They are amazing at a couple of things, but they have to hire people who are amazing at other things. And that environment where you bring in people who are better than you at things, it's really important. I read an article back in the 80s that stuck with me forever from Inc. magazine, and the article was about hiring people. And it really said, most people who are founders or entrepreneurs tend to be, you know, like a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10 in creativity, right? And what they do is they tend to hire, most of them try to hire one level underneath them so that they can remain that star. And then those people hire one level under them, and then they hire one level under them. And pretty soon you have a company full of 1s and 2s and 3s instead of a company of 9s and 10s. And that just really stuck with me forever. So I have always tried to bring people into my little fray that are better than I am at something. I know the things I'm good at, but I'm not good at everything. You have to have a group of that. And, you know, Steve Jobs was very good at that.
Yeah, there's that saying of hire people and then get out of their way. I can't remember
Yeah,
who said that, but that's kind of, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Hire people and get out of their way. Don't imagine that because you're the CEO, you have to direct every action and every, you know, your job is to create an environment in which the best work can be done. That's your job as a CEO.
That's interesting, yeah, because I guess on the external side, you're creating, as a CEO, you're creating almost the vision of the company where it's headed in that regard. But then obviously, like you said, that internally, you want that to be the best environment
Right.
to facilitate that. And when you said about Steve Jobs creating the spaces where it would facilitate creativity, he was doing exactly that. He was creating those environments that would work best for people to communicate and build that tribe.
Absolutely. And by the way, he didn't only do it with employees, although he was very good at doing it with employees, but he also did it when we were talking to the media. So we would always do these press tours. We'd take him from California to New York and, you know, introduce him to Fortune, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, all these publications. Not introduce him, he already knew them, but basically meet with them to talk about the product. And Steve would get into the hotel room hours and hours beforehand, and I used to have to help him with this. And he would get in there and completely rearrange all of the furniture and bring in new things. Like he would insist on a piano being in the room. He insisted on a certain kind of flower being in the room. He insisted on a certain kind of food being served. And the whole point of this was to create an environment that would be conducive for the journalist to come into the tribe, right? And be an advocate for Apple and for Macintosh, as opposed to, you know, anything other than an advocate. So he did it with everything. He did it with the press. He did it with employees. He did it with customers. Everything.
That's amazing because when you think of Apple stores as well, there's a
Oh my
certain way
God.
that they're developed.
Perfect
It's
example.
yeah,
That's a perfect example of exactly the same thing, right? It's the place where you go to see other members of your tribe, right? And the Genius Bar is the place where you go to see the really elite members of your tribe, right? Absolutely. I remember when he started the stores, and they were led by a guy named Ron Johnson, who I also know. And the whole point, the whole reason why Steve did those stores, which was, believe me, an out there idea at the time, because everyone sold their computer equipment through computer stores like Businessland, Computerland, those places. They were the, you know, the electronic stores of the day where you bought your computer stuff. But the problem Steve was having is those guys were starting to control the Apple brand. And there was nothing that he hated worse than that. Like, he didn't want anybody other than himself and Apple controlling the Apple brand. So that's why he decided to move out of the computer land and the business lands of the world and create his own stores so that he could have complete control over the brand and the experience with the tribe. And that's what he did. And then, of course, Microsoft copied and other people copied, but it was brilliant.
yeah. There's something about those stores, the way that they use space, light, and yeah, the way that it's kind of non-confrontational. A lot of stores will kind of, as soon as you come in, someone's jumping on you to say, you know, can I help you at all? But it's kind of
Right.
very relaxed, very chilled, very yeah, open is the word I would say.
Very open. And as you know, Apple's design over the years has always been a lot of white space, right? You know, and that was really by design. I mean, I think Steve felt that white space is where greatness happens, right? You need a little bit of prompts, but you can't think if you have too much stuff, you know, in the way. So that reflected itself in the design of the products, the design of the advertising, the design of the stores, you know, all of that was part of that whole ethos about how critical design is to the way people behave. He always understood that connection. And most CEOs don't understand that connection at all, especially in this world post-pandemic, when a lot of these companies are running without even any headquarters or any place for people to go. They're all online all the time, right? Some of these companies are figuring out they need to put that group of people together for an offsite meeting 3 or 4 times a year in order just to, you know, to generate a little bit of that human contact.
There was something I heard, I think it was Seth Godin talking about, where he said that, you've got a great brand if you can take that brand and imagine it in another industry or another space. So he was saying, if you took something and imagined the hotel of it, but you can quite easily imagine the Apple Hotel of
Yeah,
kind of
oh,
like the sleek
absolutely.
aluminium polished spaces and like, like fingerprint sensor on the door rather than a card or something. It's amazing how you could translate it to that and the characteristics.
Exactly. Because the brand is so strong, right? The brand is just so very, very strong. And I think that we may see stuff like that going forward. I mean, we may see an Apple car, right?
Yeah. Cool. So
So,
in terms of you mentioned purpose initially. So purpose and positioning. What are some of the things that when you're working with clients, what are some places you start? How do you consider that and sort of bring that in as an exercise for people to start doing and developing?
well, the first thing I do is I tell them how important it is to hire talent. And that's real, at the end of the day, they care about that. They care about getting talent, especially today, right? When so much talent has moved around. And, it used to be in my childhood or my growing up years, my parents got a job and stayed there for 25 years, right? In my generation, we got a job and we stayed there for 15 years. And now this next generation gets a job and they leave after 18 months, right? So and that's really difficult because institutional knowledge goes out the door with them. So people are really trying to get their people to stay longer. So this notion of giving them a reason to stay beyond just the job has become a big thing, right? And what do people care more about than anything else? They care about making a difference in the world. That's really, at the end of the day, what humans want to do is they want to make a difference. Money is important, but really what they want to do is feel that they are making a difference. And it's no longer enough to just make a difference for the company you're working for. Now they want to make a difference for the world because we are faced with all these global challenges that we didn't expect, right? We didn't expect to have these. We didn't expect climate change, like it is today. We didn't expect a war in Ukraine. We didn't expect gun shootings every single day, right? We're dealing with a world that has a lot more complex problems. So people want to feel like they're contributing to fixing those issues. So that's why you have to have a purpose. You have to have a reason for being for these people that goes beyond, well, we want to make a lot of money here because it isn't enough anymore. So helping people kind of uncover what their purpose is. Like, why did I always ask the 7 whys? When you first ask people, what's your purpose for a company? Well, our purpose is to make money. Our purpose is to grow to be $2 billion in revenue or whatever their economic thing is. But then if you kind of go through the 7 whys, okay, why do you want that? 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 And you get down to, okay, so I really started this company because, I wanted to create a more sustainable world, or I wanted to solve poverty in the third world, or whatever your thing is. There's typically some kind of a reason underneath it all that you chose this very business to do as opposed to that business to do. And I think if you can just kind of help people get down to that, it's very powerful, right? I told you I was at Hyatt headquarters today, and the CEO of this company just recently went through a very large purpose exercise and really did it with a great deal of thought and a great deal of effort went into it. My firm didn't do that work. It was done by a company called SY Partners, but it was really well done, and it took months and months and months to just, how do you uncover a great hotel chain like Hyatt and figure out why do they exist, right? It took a long time to uncover all those layers. But this was a big goal of the CEOs. I mean, his name is Mark Hoplamazian, and he's very, very purpose driven as an individual, and he wanted that to be reflected in the company. And so that's what they did. So it's very important today to have that.
Yeah, sometimes when I'm talking to clients about purpose and to try and explain, I would say give the example of, Crayola and Nike are quite good ones, but Crayola is to help children be more creative and inspire their parents to help them. But I would say, if you imagine if you were working there for the first day and someone said, you're here to sell children's crayons, that's one thing. But if someone said you're here to help children be more creative and enable their parents to inspire them, that's not only that it's that purpose, but it's also like a mandate, an innovative box that you can kind of work in and work from and be autonomous and help with things like that. And I think, would you say that's an important part of purpose, is almost like not firing up, but fueling that internal team?
Absolutely. It gives them inspiration. It gives them like you said, fuel. I think that's a great word, fuel to keep doing what they're doing, because it has a bigger effect at the end of the day. You know, when you mentioned the children, I learned the other day that Lego, you know, Lego, the company that makes the little Lego blocks, their purpose statement is to inspire the builders of the future,
Yeah,
which is such a cool thing. I
yeah,
mean, that almost gives you chills. It's like, wow, it just
so
makes you
cool.
want to work there, right?
Yeah, there's a also they did a campaign of it where they had like the child in sort of like was building the suit around them of what they were going to be. So it was like building a doctor's suit or building an astronaut suit around them as they were with the Lego
Yes.
bricks. It was amazing, amazing campaign, amazing
Yeah,
campaign.
it is an amazing company, and that purpose is very amazing, and it attracts talent. It keeps them in the team, on the team. It keeps them in the tribe, and it keeps them doing what they're doing every day, because what they're doing is inspiring the builders of tomorrow, not just building another fire truck. You know,
Yes,
that's the whole point of, that's what businesses should be doing. What I love about what the millennials brought to we baby boomers is this notion that companies should be more than just shareholder value machines. That companies are the engine that make the whole world work. So why not use them in a much greater, you know, to a much greater purpose? And I think that's the greatest gift, in my opinion, the millennials brought to the world. Sure, there are others, but that's a huge one.
definitely. Yeah, no. So with that, the purpose side of things, obviously there are huge things that like you mentioned in the world that we can tackle. Sometimes with purpose, is it also what you can do in your industry, and also how does say CSR and stuff like that play into that sort of retaining top talent, and plays into that idea of you're doing something more with a company.
Right. So CSR, I think, came into being for this very same reason, right? It was okay, now that this is becoming a thing, we probably need to make it a real thing, right? It needs to be measurable. You know, it needs to be something that gets reported on, so people can see what people are doing as it relates to these things. So I think it has turned into a metric, just like return on investment, right? Just like shareholder value. All these things, when they become important, a metric gets attached to them, and then we start reporting on it, and we say, oh, our CSR score is this, or our ROI is this, or our shareholder value is that. So it needed to become a metric. I do think that we've over rotated on that just a hair. You know, I worked on a CSR report for a company, like right probably halfway through the pandemic, and they had so many programs in their CSR effort. Like, there were probably 200
Whoa.
programs, and the book was this thick to report on it all. And it just, by the time, well, I worked on it, so I was in it all the time, but it's like by the time you got done looking at it, your brain was exploding with too much information. Remember when I said that Steve Jobs really appreciated the value of white space?
Yeah.
I think in CSR, it's the same thing, right? If your purpose is to inspire the builders of the future, like Lego's purpose is, then that's what your CSR should be geared toward, not these 20 million other things, you know, that you think people are telling you to do, like make the world more sustainable, and, you know, get rid of poverty and educate all the children around. I mean, all these things. There's room for everybody to have a purpose where all those things will get done. But if you put your purpose resources into your purpose, I think you know, the power of it is going to be so much greater. And I think Tesla is a great example of this, right? Tesla, you know, back in 2006, Elon Musk put out his super strategic plan for Tesla, right? This was in 2006, and it basically had 4 steps. It was build a sports car that people want to buy, electric, use that money to build a more affordable car, use that money to build an even more affordable car, and then use that money to bring the world into an electric, you know, more sustainable place. Like 4 points was all he had for the whole company, and that's what he's doing, right? And those are the things that he may not be you know, he might be challenging to work with. I imagine he is. I've never worked with him, but the purpose of that company drives people to want to be there, because they want to help the world be a more sustainable place. So
Always found with Tesla as well that the communication side of things, they manage to communicate their kind of end goal without even saying it a lot of the time, just
yeah,
through their actions, just through what they do and how they deliver what they want to do. You understand what it is. You might not be able to say it exactly how Elon Musk would say it, but you know where they're going. That's a really
exactly.
interesting concept, I think.
Exactly. And I think that one of the things that Tesla does really well, and Apple did this really well, and a lot of the really great companies do this well, is they figure out how to get to the simplicity on the other side of complexity, right?
Yeah.
Like whenever you approach any problem, you first might think it's simple, but then you get into it and you tie yourself into this Gordian knot about, with what you're doing and all the things you're doing and all the things that have to be piled on and everything. And it winds up with this hairball of a thing. And then, and, and then sometimes companies stop there because they think they've achieved it, but it's too difficult to understand. It's too much to swallow. It's too much. So when you can take it from there to the simplicity on the other side of that hairball, then you have really got something. And that's what Tesla did really well. That's what Apple did really well. I think IBM has done that really well a few times over the course of their history. A lot of companies have done that well, but not most of them don't.
So what are some examples, and you've given some really great examples, but what are some examples of companies that you think are doing some really good things when it comes to retaining talent, purpose, and their positioning to do that?
Wow. So, well, I mentioned Lego. I think they're a super great example of this. I think Tesla is also a great example of it. Some companies, let's see, I work, this is a company probably nobody has heard of on your podcast, but it's a company called Conversica, and Conversica makes a kind of a digital assistant that helps B2B companies sell their stuff. It's a digital assistant that augments the workforce, and their purpose is to increase the potential of their workforce. So this is what's a really nice thing about Conversica. The purpose statement there, and we did help them kind of articulate this, but the purpose there is to increase the potential of teams, right? How do you increase the potential of teams? Well, there are probably many ways of looking at that, but the way that Conversica does it is they do it by adding these digital assistants to the team. So not replacing the team, but letting the team do the human things that people do on teams really well, like, creatively think about things, solve problems with customers, let the humans do the human things and let the digital assistants do the other things. And so it all kind of ladders up together to their purpose of unleashing human potential, right? That's kind of what they're trying to do. But they're doing it through what their product is, which is these digital assistants that they're augmenting teams with. So I think that's a great example of a small company coming up with a purpose that really, really matters. I did work also with another slightly bigger company called Zapier, which a lot of people might have heard of in your world. And Zapier's purpose is really to automate everything.
Yeah.
They want to make the world a more automated place so that people can have time to do the things that they want to do as humans. And that too is a really powerful purpose. So you have to kind of decide what your purpose is as a company. And I think it does take a little bit of psychoanalysis to come up with that, because it's so easy to say, I'm here to build a great company, go public, become wealthy, and move to Fiji,
Definitely. So yeah, I love that Zapier one because I've used Zapier quite a bit, and it does do that. It just makes
and
everything
they do
easy.
it. And they
Yeah.
do it with their product, right? So that's the other thing I think is worth pointing out. Whatever your purpose statement is, it has to cascade down to what your product does, right? It can't be something like wild that isn't associated with what you do, which is why sustainability for Tesla makes a lot of sense, which is why automating everything for Zapier makes sense. But if you want, if you have a product that isn't associated in any way with your purpose, then you're not communicating effectively to the outside world. So
Definitely. Yeah, cool. So as a final thought, what would you say is the single most kind of important thing someone should consider with a business today? What's the kind of thing they need to focus on the most?
wow, that is a profound question.
Yeah.
I do think it's team building. I think it's finding the right talent and then turning them into a team or a tribe, and then putting them to work against a bigger cause, like a purpose statement, so that they are with you on the journey, right? They're with you long enough to get to where it is you need to go, and making it a sense of belonging, creating a sense of belonging so that other people want to join the team. And then of course there's the other side of the equation, which is you have to have a good product, right? But I always take that as a given. If you don't have a good product, you don't deserve to be in business. So build a good product for sure, but it's the people that are going to push it forward, not so much the product. So
That's awesome. So where can people find out more about yourself, Cunningham Collective, and some of your books and the things you've
Yeah,
done?
thank you. So cunninghamcollective.com is our website, but my book is Get to Aha, and I think it would be great if people could read it because it does explain a lot of this stuff about why companies are like people and people are like companies, and which is kind of the underlying thesis that I go with. Teaches you how to do positioning, which is great. I'm working on my second book. It's not out yet though, but it's called Activating Aha. And the
Oh, cool.
subtitle of my second book is How to Hack the Human Condition to Get Things Done. So,
Nice.
so basically, it's there's a lot of inspiration in there, right? It's a lot about how to inspire people to do things. So it's kind of the topic that we've been talking about. So, yeah, so that's I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter. So would love to connect with people.
Cool. And I'll put all the links in the show notes. And just to say on Get to Aha, it's one of the best books I've ever I listened to because I'm already Audible subscriber, but I listened to. It was amazing, along with the positioning the battle for your mind. And you mentioned that in the beginning of the book. You talk about that,
Yes,
and you talk about how Al Reese has kind of said it was positioning 2.0. And
yes.
yeah, the book's awesome. It's amazing, and it's really sort of changed the way I think about branding and developing that sort of strategic side of the brand. So thank you very much for that, and I'm really looking forward to the next book. So thanks very much for coming on.
Well, thank you, Chris. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks a lot.
No worries. Talk soon.
Okay, bye-bye.